Hello, everyone. We're going to go over The Waves of War by Carl Bankston III and Danielle Hidalgo in Contemporary Asian America Multidictionary Reader. My name is Professor Bond. So we are now going to go over different Southeast Asian migration. So for Vietnamese or Vietnamese Americans, they had one of the most tragic histories. What most Americans know is the Vietnam War from 1955 to 1975, where they were colonized attempted by France, and even before that, China, other entities, and the US, as well as Japan. So they had a very tragic history, but there was lots of resistance, and they always fought back. So after the Americans lost the war and pulled out in 1976, refugees arrived to the USA to escape political persecution. Today, there's over 2.1 million Vietnamese in the United States, primarily in California, New York, Texas, uh, um, and some southern states. To understand the Vietnamese, you have to understand the waves that they came in. There are actually more than three waves, but I'm going to go over the first three waves because that's the most important. The first wave was 1974 to 1976, were elite, wealthy, well-educated. They knew French, they knew some English, private school. So a lot of this group was the top 10% of society, a lot of them were ethnically Chinese. So this group goes to college and gets a lot of degrees. And so when you look at that cohort and you look at the traditional cohort, you see that they are very much ethnically Chinese and also elite. So the second group, 77 to 80s, they're quote unquote called the boat people. These people actually, endured the most heinous traumas, mass killings and they saw, and it was very terrible. They were farmers. They're not educated. Obviously, when they came to the United States, they had massive dropouts. There's lots of YouTube videos you can watch about the boat people and how a lot of them were intercepted while swimming out of the place, and unfortunately, a lot of people took advantage of them, and sometimes in the boats that they're went in, they sunk, or people went there, they took the men and they drowned them, and the women, heinous things to the children and women. So, really terrified boat people. So the third wave was a mixed Amerasia wave, and they came through acts like the Reunification Act. So I want you to think of the mixed race or Amerasian children. Vietnam is a monoracial society. Everyone is Asian. And so a lot of the children of these mixes were from US soldiers. So I want you to imagine how these children were viewed by the Vietnamese, right? They phenotypically do not look in many ways Vietnamese. Their parents were often half Latino, or their fathers were Latino or African American or Anglo, and the children looked very mixed. And so that was a very common sentiment to think that these were the result of prostitution and U.S. soldiers. And so again, a lot of these people were not allowed to go to school. They weren't literate in written Vietnamese. And so when they were finally able to join the United States, they came as fake families. So a lot of people said that this is their son, daughter, and they came to the United States. But, once they got here, they're abandoned by their fake family. And so, some of these people have joined gangs and to survive. And, of course, they didn't do well in school. So they dropped out immediately because they didn't have a base in Vietnamese, let alone learning a new language of English. So very tragic. And a lot of the now third wave actually are subject to deportation back to a country that would very much be hostile to them. Now, if you're looking at Laos, Laos has another very tragic history. It's considered the most bombed country in the world. The bombs are still there. President Obama has pledged millions of dollars to clean it up. A lot of Lao came to this country because of the Secret War. The U.S. Saw that the northern Vietnamese were running lines through this thing called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Ho Chi Minh Trail touched Laos and Cambodia, and they illegally bombed that country. So the path of it really destabilized that country. The path of the communist group just had disputes with other groups, and there was like kind of internal civil war. And so again, people were running away from persecution and they went through the Mekong River to go to Thailand for safety. So a couple 100,000 immigrated to the United States. So lots of waves of Lao. The first wave were wealthy, relatively educated. Second wave dropped out, teen pregnancies, incarceration, and third wave, untold trauma. Not doing as well. And again, the numbers, just like the Vietnamese, are very incorrect because if looking at the numbers for Lao, it looks like it's kind of high education rate, but that's actually not looking at the second and third waves and also the massive undocumented number that's into the United States. So another group is a Cambodian group. Also one of the most tragic histories in Southeast Asia. So Khmer Rouge, U.S. bombed illegally into Cambodia, very much destabilized the country. There was a guy named Pol Pot. He was a Marxist-Leninist, crazy, as we say. He wanted to make the Cambodia great again. He wanted year zero, like what it was 1,000 years ago, where everyone was just a farmer. So what he did with his disgusting group, the Khmer Rouge, he actually mass killed all the doctors, lawyers, teachers, anyone who spoke a different language, people who wore glasses, who wore jeans. So obviously there was ethnic Vietnamese there. Most of them were murdered. If you look at the ethnic Chinese living there, 50% were murdered. And so he really was terrible. He also took all the women out of the cities, killing all the men. And he actually forced married them to farmers or to his own Khmer Rouge group. And of course, these are very terrible couplings and continuing to have issue into when they immigrated to the United States. So very tragic group, continuing trauma, intergenerational trauma. So again, the different waves, the education was very poor for Cambodians who came to the United States because again, the most educated were murdered, mass murdered. So the ones who came were deeply traumatized, put into very poor cities, underserved schools. So obviously they did not do well, massive dropout rate, crime they committed to survive. And now a lot of them who did crime in their youth are subjected to deportation now. So kind of the quote hashtag school to prison to deportation pipeline. So the Hmong are a huge group. Hmong are originally from China. They are part of the Miao tribe. All Hmong are Miao, but not all Miao are Hmong. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of Miao. And so they are a direct kind of root. So some Hmong had some political disputes. Part of the Miao group, and they actually left China and they moved into countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. So there was a secret war in 1961 and 1975. The U.S. Could not physically fight in the war, although they did bomb the country of Laos so incessantly. But they had a proxy fighting soldier troop, and that was the Hmong. And again, I don't want to make any broad statements because some Hmong actually did fight against the United States, but some fought on the Laos side, the communist side. And so again, not one story. There's multiple stories. So in 1970s came to the United States, multiple school issues, of course, being traumatized from the war. Also, some obviously you don't have access to school while there's a war. So massive dropout rates and teen pregnancy. And so that continues to be an ongoing issue, but there has been a lot of improvement in second generation. Philippines was a Spanish colony during the 16th to 19th century. In 1898, there's a Spanish-American War that quote unquote freed them. 1903 to 1938, Pisado Act allowed all Filipino students to come to the United States. But after the 1965 Act, or the Hart-Celler Act, which is pushed by African Americans, that actually increased the Filipino number very exponentially. And also, additionally, we had lots of visas for nurses and engineers. So again, that really makes it huge. But again, I want you to think about also the large number of undocumented Filipinos that are also in the United States, which is really large number. For instance, if you're looking at the University of California school system, there are more undocumented Asians than there are undocumented Latinos. So again, I want you to expand what you think of in terms of undocumented. Thai Americans, they also came here in post 1970s. Very elite, wealthy Thai students and professionals entered the US, similar to Indonesian Americans, Indonesians. But again, the numbers are not exactly true because there's a large number of undocumented Thais who presently live in poverty in the US. Something about Thai is they primarily live in California, LA in particular, and they generally are Buddhist. So I hope you learned something from this talk.